We're here. We're finally here. All right, guys. Finally. Welcome back. We are here for part two of the why is recruiting to blame for the broken job market. A little bit of a whistleblower type of experience here. You know, obviously, folks who might be watching this are not coming from a professional recruiting background, and you've heard some terminology thrown around in the first part one video where we talked about full life cycle recruiting. And that's definitely a very specific industry term in the recruiting world. And full life cycle implies that there's several steps, you know, that go from point A to point B, which is from the point a position is open and someone needs to be hired to it all the way through until the position has been filled with the selected candidate who is offered the role, accepts it, and then moves in from being a candidate for a role into a new hire status, and then from a new hire status into an employee status. And during that new hire to employee is actually onboarding, which typically is the handoff point from recruiting over to human resources. And then human resources is an internal function of supports basically all of the working population for any business or organization. And you know, various things that happen along the way, performance, you know, performance reviews, disciplinary action, you know, opportunities for promotions, all of that kind of stuff is then navigated by the human resource department or the people department, you know, within any type of business or organization, or a person. You know, certainly smaller to mid-sized businesses could have one person that, you know, does all of the above that I just described. So I want to kind of walk through it. Kristen and I will share along the way as we talk about the full life cycle recruiting process. And I'm not going to do a deep dive here, guys. It's going to be super high level. And we're going to talk about the very clear challenges that a recruiter will face, you know, in that recruiting process. And I think it's a really good way to help get us on the same page. And for maybe you as someone who is not a person who has a background in recruiting, or had really any exposure to it, to really understand, you know, why in fact we believe that this is the problem and this is the challenge. So first things first, what I will share with you in the recruiting life cycle is obviously there's a need, right? There's a need for a position inside of a business or an organization of any kind, that there is a position and a job that needs to be filled. When that is created, we officially call that terminology a requisition, a request, right, for a position that's going to be filled. And so that requisition is opened. Typically nowadays, there's very few businesses of any kind, unless it's a really small business, because unfortunately applicant tracking systems are quite expensive, and are not typically something that a small or micro-sized business and even many startups would have the ability to, you know, access, because it is very expensive. But inside of an applicant tracking system, a requisition is created and then probably goes through some chain of command in terms of approval. But the only way for that requisition to be created is through a job description. So a job description for that role either exists or needs to be created. And that's usually, again, I would say more of a human resource function, that they're working with the internal hiring manager and they're creating that requisition. From there, once the requisition is created, then and the job description is created, then it would be, okay, let's bring in recruiting. Now it's time for what we call an intake meeting. And that intake meeting is a chance for the recruiter to meet with the hiring manager, possibly if there's a human resource business partner of some kind, for them to walk through what's the role, what are you specifically looking for, what are like the absolute must-haves in terms of, you know, the requirements for the role versus nice to haves, and make sure that really there's a lot of consulting that happens by the recruiter at this point, where they say, what you're looking for may not even exist. What you're looking for might exist, but it's going to be really difficult. So you have to be competitive in regards to compensation and benefits and things of that nature, flexibilities, which are super important in today's market. So we go through a consulting meeting, basically, which is called an intake call. But Kristen, what's your experience been in terms of our process of, like, we apply to jobs, that's how we get new contracts. And the irony, of course, right, that we're recruiters applying to recruiting jobs that are dealing with recruiters who are doing this nonsense. So what's your experience been?
So we have, as Angela mentioned, we're always applying to contract recruiter jobs that we see online, because we're trying to land new recruiting contracts with different companies all across the nation. So this isn't tied to any specific geographical area, really all across the globe, honestly. And so when we apply, we know firsthand, like you can't just apply to the job and then walk away. You have to be aggressive in your follow-up. You have to make the phone calls. You have to go on LinkedIn and search, who's the leadership, who are decision makers at this company. You have to scream really, really loud
and attack from a lot of angles.
And a multi-pronged approach for sure. And even with that super aggressive follow-up that we do, that probably at least 50%, if not more, of job seekers aren't doing, because it is time consuming. We don't even hear back from every single job that we apply to. It's far from.
Actually, let's be more clear on this. We've got data. We track this because I'm also just a big numbers nerd. So we put in, guys, listen to this, 400 applications a week to jobs, all of which we're qualified for. Again, the irony of the fact that we're applying for recruiting jobs. And we put 400 applications in a week. We follow up aggressively on all 400 of those applications. And the outcome of that in a good week is going to be somewhere between 4 to 7
I was going to say, I'm like lucky if I talk to 4 people. Right. If I'm lucky if I interview with 4 different companies a week. So, and I can tell you firsthand, me as a job seeker and not a business owner, I never would have known that, never would have done that. But just having that experience has really been hugely.
We have data, we use the CRM tool that allows us to track all of this in terms of our business development, but we're still out there, guys. We're out there right with you, constantly interviewing, and looking for jobs to apply to in order for us to get new contracts in terms of recruiting. And that's our experience. 400 applications, follow up aggressively on all 400, which will get us in a good week 4 to 7 interviews.
And then,
so I just want to,
once I have the interview, the fallout of recruiters that are just ghosting after that is ridiculous as well.
And again, that is what everybody's experiencing out in the market, right? That's the frustration that people are experiencing. Anybody who's been in the job market, I would say probably pretty solidly for the last 1.5 to 2 years, everybody's had the same frustrations and complaints. Why am I getting no response to jobs that I'm qualified to do, and I'm getting no response? Or I'm getting a response, and then it's one of these, are you interested things? I never actually get set up for any type of phone screen or an interview. And if they do, then they get into the process and they get ghosted. They just get dropped. There's no update. There's no responses, which is, I think, a great segue into what's the next stage in the recruiting life cycle to share with you. So after we've sourced, whether it's passive candidates, whether we're screening applicants that are coming in, the next stage is a recruiter phone screen, which, as I mentioned, if you're a solid recruiter, you're going to be sending out invitations like a human being, right? Like not through AI. And we're going to send an invitation to you for a specific date and time for a phone screen. You get on the phone screen, and the goal is, this is just a pure logistics conversation. It's to go, hey, let's confirm, here's the job. Are you clear on what the job is? And then the employer is in a position where we're asking, do you in fact meet the qualifications for the job? We're giving some other logistics in terms of maybe things like location. Is it a remote working role? Is there a specific location? Is there travel? We're covering all those logistics. We might have maybe 1 or 2 hiring manager qualifier questions that we're asking, but for the most part, it's usually somewhere in the realm of like 15 to 20 minutes, and it's a fairly quick call just to, again, confirm qualifications. From there, if the recruiter is doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to document that phone screen information, and they're going to then determine that, in fact, this person is qualified, and they're going to submit that candidate in the form of both the phone screen documentation and their resume to the hiring manager for the hiring manager to review and determine if they would like to move them forward to a first round technical information-based interview. Or actually, I would say it's typically an interview. And that at that point should happen with the hiring manager. The hiring manager at that point, they're the decision maker. As recruiters, we're just here to give qualified options, right, to the hiring manager. We're not here to make decisions for the hiring manager. And so if the hiring manager would like to move forward, now we go into admin mode, guys. And this is the other big distinguishing factor as to whether or not a recruiter is a solid recruiter. Apparently, as we have learned in our process of recently hiring experienced recruiters, and I'm talking about people who have 10, 15, 20 plus years of full life cycle recruiting experience, the feedback that we have received from almost all of them is that they're not used to doing the admin stuff. And to us, we're like, we're confused. You know, we're just like, so do you do full life cycle recruiting or don't you? And then I think what happens is that a lot of once recruiters get past a certain time in their career, they kind of think like they're beyond the admin component, which to me is a little bit ironic because a lot of recruiters are one person shows. Like they
Yeah.
could be the only person doing recruiting inside of a corporation. They could be the only contract recruiter. They could be the only, if they're agency recruiter, they're the only one supporting that particular client, So there's a good possibility that in a lot of situations, I know for me, my 12 years in corporate, most of those situations, if I was the recruiter, I was the only one, or alternatively, I had a team of recruiters, but we didn't really have like administrative support. I would say that in more often than not, it was each recruiter was truly responsible from soup to nuts for every single aspect of recruiting and that full life cycle process. And once you get past the submittal stage, it is heavy admin at that point, all the way through until you get to a final offer where you get to have like, that lovely experience, that wonderful experience of extending an offer to a candidate and hopefully having them accept it and getting them all the way through until and handing them off to HR to get them onboarded. But at this point, like to me, this is where the real work comes into play. Do you agree with that, Kristen?
Yeah, that's the bulk of the
I
work.
think you're a better person to talk about that. Like, do you want to share like what the admin part? Because I mean, you spent years, in the early years of our business,
I
like
have a
that's all
long
you were doing.
list of the things that you do on the admin side. So everything from the time that you email that original candidate that you find when you're sourcing passive candidates, the communication with them to confirm that time that you're going to phone screen them, actually doing the phone screen, and then afterwards tying up your phone screen notes, turning it into a PDF, sending it to the hiring manager, following up with the hiring manager to see if they have feedback for you.
Scheduling the interview.
Keeping the candidate status and keeping them moving through the ATS. We also keep a separate Google Live tracker that everybody goes on just to keep our ducks in a row. If we're working on filling 15 different positions,
So that people don't get ghosted.
Exactly. If we're working on 15 positions, say, and each of those positions have 10, 15, 20 candidates in process, we have to keep a live update that's, helping us keep all of our ducks in a row and keep everybody updated. Sending emails to those candidates every single week, whether we have an update or not, from the hiring manager, just to say, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. And I will tell you, 80% at least of the candidates that we send these updates to are like, wow, I never hear from recruiters after I talk to them. This is really nice.
Yep.
What else?
So interview scheduling, mind you, some hiring managers are like phone screen, one interview, maybe a final offer. Other companies have, like, as I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing out there, which of course is infuriating, could have 5 or 6 interviews as a part of a process. So a recruiter is responsible for that. They're responsible for all communications as the middle person between the candidates and the hiring manager, for all of the scheduling in terms of getting calendars. Like if it's in person, you're responsible. Sometimes there could be travel involved, all of those pieces and those details, like really, really minute details, all the way through to sending directions to someone and knowing where they arrive and who they should ask for and what they should bring with them.
Somehow some recruiters tend to get to a point in their career where they've decided that they've graduated from this.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I mentioned earlier, I was just saying, like, it's weird to me because in my 12 years in corporate, I never experienced that myself. Like it was, you always as a recruiter were responsible for the entire life cycles, most certainly the bulk of that work, which is the administrative pieces to this. And so, you're constantly have interviews and you're debriefing afterwards from whoever the interviewer or interviewers, if it was a panel, and then you're going back to the candidate, you're letting them know, and you're continuing to move them through all the stages of that particular interview process, all the way through until decisions are made. And we're making sure that a candidate is never like, I was told that I was like one of the 2 finalists and then I never heard anything again. It shocks me to know firsthand, because we've gone through this. We've literally had, when we've interviewed for jobs and we've been told, yeah, you're the one, you're the one, you're the one. And then we've had employers disappear on us. So we know what's happening there, and we've heard as an employer this happening to other people. I will tell you, there's also another part of this, which is, again, I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation, but we have gotten ghosted as an employer. We've gotten ghosted by countless candidates in our process. And you would think like the higher level in terms of skill set or requirements for the role, it would get better, and it's not. Like, it's actually less professional. I would say our entry level positions, entry to mid level positions, we don't typically have candidates ghost us. We typically have candidates ghost us that are at kind of like that, mid level manager and above, type of roles. So it is happening on both sides, and I'm not pretending that it doesn't. But I will say again, I wonder how much of this is a reaction to how employers, and I will say this, specifically recruiters, specifically recruiters. Now that recruiter could be half recruiter, half HR, but the recruiters, the people responsible for the recruiting life cycle, are the ones that are doing the ghosting. And 9 times out of 10, the hiring manager has no clue that that's what's going on.
Once in a blue moon, you'll have a candidate complain, at a higher level, and you'll hear about it. But they have all the excuses in the world.
Yeah, they're all the recruiters are prepared. They're prepared to say, this is why X, Y, Z. Now, here's the thing again. I'm not going to sit here and pretend there's not challenges for recruiters, because there are. The reality is that if you're a one-person show, you cannot possibly be doing a phone screen, sourcing, candidate communications, and meeting with hiring managers at the same time. Each one of those things have to be done individually.
And they're all very time consuming, especially sourcing.
Yes, and the admin is extremely, time consuming. You would have to be a absolute time management mastermind to do all of the things that you're supposed to do as a recruiter, and do it really, really well. If you even just had 10 requisitions, as I mentioned earlier, that means 10 job openings that you're working on. And you really would have to be. And the problem is that because instead of recruiters kind of speaking up and saying like, hey, here's the reality of like what a 40-hour work week looks like for me, or even like if they're in a salary job and they're getting paid a nice healthy salary, even what a 50-hour work week would look like for me. And if they're not speaking up and saying, here's the realities of what I can do, because I can only do one thing at a time. Now, I will say this has also been a justification for AI. Like, this is where people have said, I'm only one person, you can only do one thing at a time. So I'd rather set up mechanisms like that phone screen, instead of it being with an actual person, they're going to do a one-way video, right? To save time. Maybe they're going to put in mechanisms like the "Are you interested?" spam mails that go out, in terms of sourcing. So there are alternatives that can be time saving, but unfortunately, that doesn't spell out quality process.
All of this leads to a lack of, human touch. Mm-hmm. And the whole process gets dehumanized. And that's when recruiters start to think it's acceptable to ghost people. And that's when candidates start to think, well, it's okay to ghost them too. Like, the human touch and human element and treating people with respect mm-hmm. and dignity as human beings has completely been lost.
Right. And because at the end of the day, AI can't do that, right? Everybody is just the same at that point. You're just a number. And I kind of sit there and go, man, if that's how somebody's being treated from their first interaction, they're going to clearly be treated like that through the rest of their interaction as well, which is why it's so easy for people to ghost each other, because there's not actually any meaningful connection that's there. And why the outcome are, situations where now, flash forward to what we talked about in part 1 of this video, which is what is happening in the current job market. And you sit there and you go, how is it possible for both employers to say what's going on? Where's the interested qualified candidates? And at the same time, job seekers going, I'm qualified and I've applied and I'm interested in this role. Why am I not getting any response? Or why am I getting ghosted? And then meanwhile, businesses of all kinds, of all sizes, are struggling like hell when it comes to hiring. And at the same time, candidates are out there for 9, 12, 18 months looking for employment when these are highly qualified people for their profession. Now, again, there's always exceptions to all this, guys. So don't sit here and beat us up or invest energy into analyzing the exceptions. We're obviously talking about the rule, right? We're talking about what is happening the majority of the time. This isn't just theory. This is based on everything we've shared with you of what we have seen firsthand, and as people who cumulatively between myself, Kristen, and Melissa have over 50 years of experience in the recruiting industry in all of the different methodologies. And we're telling you, this is what's happening. This is what's to blame.
We are
And
current
so,
everyday job seekers. We are
mhm,
also current everyday employers. We're current everyday recruiters for clients. And we're also current everyday hiring and training recruiters to work alongside of us. So
right,
we see it from all the different
right.
angles.
So I put a challenge out there, guys. I'm just gonna like put it out there. Anybody that knows me for even 10 minutes knows I'm a straight shooter, and I just kind of drive home to the point at some point. And I go, I'm calling it out, recruiters. I'm calling it out in the industry. Have you are you actually doing full life cycle recruiting? Are you doing all of the steps with a high level of integrity and dedication to best practices? Or have you given in to the temptation of AI? Have you given in, even worse, to putting on a show, to making it look like? Are you part of the group that is not actually sourcing in a best practice approach?
Now, I also
Are
want to add that there
Yeah,
could be an element of employers putting too much on the recruiters and the recruiters not
right.
speaking up. There's a lot
Yes.
of employers out there who are like, oh, the recruiter can handle 50, well, let me
Yeah.
not exaggerate,
Yeah.
20, 30
Right.
requisitions. And by the way, I'm going to throw a few projects on your plate and expect you to get it all done in 40 hours. Instead of that recruiter speaking up and saying, if you want me to do a good quality job and focus on production of hiring the way that I should be, this is honestly how many recs I can handle at a time
Mhm.
in order to do that good job. Instead, nobody's speaking up. They're not speaking up. They're just saying, okay, I got it. I'll do it, until they're miserable and they leave and they quit and they never tell the employer why.
Right.
This is conversations I'm having with companies and recruiters every single day.
Yeah.
Realistically, you have to have a realistic workload on your plate to be able to do this.
And I will tell you over here, because there isn't any secret sauce to like the what we do over here, and nothing magical in terms of why we have been 100% successful in our fourth recruiting methodology, which is called flex recruiting. There isn't a secret sauce. We acknowledge the fact that only one person can be doing each one of those things as a part of full life cycle recruiting at one time. This is why we have client teams. And we have client teams that are dedicated individual resources to our clients. And we still have that tunnel vision that you should be having as an in-house corporate recruiter. But we have the resources and the people and the time available because we are hyper disciplined when it comes to how we manage time. If anything, I would say if there's any secret sauce behind us, it is our time management discipline. And it's something, quite frankly, I haven't seen anywhere else. It's so unique and so unheard of, and we pay so much attention to our workforce management here, that we're now taking our process, our formulas, and we've automated it into an app that's going to be actually released into Apple and Android stores. I hope by no later than the end of second quarter, and will be out there for the public to be able to use in their businesses. But I will say, like, if there's anything that we do here, that's kind of our secret sauce. It is that discipline to best practices. It's the discipline to the OG approach to full life cycle recruiting, and it's the discipline to time management. But the reality is, guys, and this is what I'm sorry to share with everyone is that's not happening.
No.
And I would go in upwards of 90% of recruiters in any industry, recruiters in any model or methodology, from in-house to contract to agency, they're not doing these things.
I
But
think
they're
it's really important for recruiters to really reflect and be, first and foremost, be honest with yourself.
yeah,
Are you doing these things? Why are you not doing these things? We've thrown out a couple of suggestions of why, time, being a huge factor. But what else can you
right,
think of? Why are you moving in this, dehumanization route of recruiting
right.
and really just trying to put on the show? And then once you're honest with yourself, hopefully
Mhm.
you'll be able to be honest with your colleagues, and then eventually your employer. And we can't fix the problem until we're honest.
Right. And I think that's an excellent call out, about like that first honesty with yourself. And I would also just say, guys, we got to fix this, right? And as I think it's really hard for me being a part of an industry for 25 years now, and a profession that I've always felt really like proud to be a part of. And right now I'm not feeling very proud.
No.
Like right now I'm sitting here going, man, we are the cause, we are the bottleneck, we are causing, you know, literal personal financial hardship to both businesses and organizations as well as to job seekers. Like we are causing this, this situation, and it's in our ability and our skill set to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate and was so passionate about making this a video and making it a two-part video at that, and really taking the time and not just kind of throwing it out as if it's an opinion. This is not an opinion. This is the reality of what's happening in the job market. And I think the sooner that other recruiters get honest with themselves, and then they not only get honest, but they change. And whether that's first step might just be speaking up and saying, I can't accomplish and do and take care of the candidates and the hiring managers the way I need to, because of my workload. This is just not possible. And, and then also in terms of resources, making sure that they have the resources they have. I don't know if recruiters are doing this because they're worried about, potentially like losing their jobs or making themselves look bad. But that's not really what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing out there is that you've got people, a certain personality type, which are very like typically very extroverted type A's working in an industry like recruiting, who got sent home. If you weren't home already by the pandemic, you got sent home to work from home. And now all the skills you had learned over the years to make it look like you were getting work done now became really easy to put the show on. And it became really easy to just kind of become resume pushers, just kind of push a couple resumes that you happen to, applicants that came in that meet the qualifications, and you just kind of push them out. You don't phone screen them, you don't do anything with them, you just push them out to the hiring manager. And then you wait on the hiring manager to respond to you at some point in time. And then they go, oh, we like them. And then you go, okay, great, let me go. Then you go back to the candidate, and the candidate isn't responsive and isn't interested at that point. And then you're like, oh, sorry, they're not interested. And this just keeps happening over and over again, week after week after week. I mean, in most situations when we've been hired on, our clients are in a lot of pain, and they have had recs, meaning jobs, open and posted and should have been actively recruited on for upwards of a minimum of 6+ months. 6+ months. And we're coming in there, we then get the role filled within 2, if not less, because there's actually already a pool of candidates in there who probably haven't even been looked at, in terms of applicants. So we already have a jump off point. And then all of a sudden, either the hiring manager, the talent, leader, the recruiting leader, or the recruiter that's in house is like, I don't understand. How come you guys were able to fill this role so fast? And they try to act like what we're doing here is magic, and it's not. It's just a discipline to good best practices in recruiting. That's what we're doing here. Nothing special. I promise you.
Yeah.
We're not that special. We're just really, really, really highly dedicated and disciplined to what we know are the right ways to navigate a full life cycle recruiting process that will give the respect and the honor and the dignity that every human being deserves. Every single one. And what level role this is, how much money you make, any of that stuff doesn't mean anything. You're a person, and you deserve to be treated with the honor, like with the integrity that you deserve in any situation. And I think sometimes we forget about that. It kind of that's what the feeling of defeat happens as a job seeker, right? When you're out there and you just feel like you're getting rejected at every turn. And then you feel super demotivated, to work your way through the process. And I would just tell you, guys, don't ever forget, every one of you are important. Every single one of you. Every person has value. And it is not for anybody else to determine your value for you. Your value is in and of yourself because you simply exist on this planet. That's all it takes. That's all it takes for you to be important and of value. And you deserve to be treated that way, no matter what the situation is. And so when you go through this, I really want you to know that as a job seeker, don't let those feelings of insecurity and and defeat sneak up on you. Know at this point what's actually going on, who's to blame. Sorry, recruiters that are out there, because I know you don't want the blame to be pointed at you. And this could, I don't know how far this video is going to go. If you guys are watching this and you feel like this is a value, share, get it out there, get the word out there, in terms of what is the actual cause of the broken job market right now. share this video, get the word out there. And I get it that we could get some backlash here from other recruiters going,
No, we're not the
being upset.
problem.
Yeah, be upset that the blame is being pointed at them. And they're going to have all the reasons in the world, most of which we've shared with you today. But it doesn't change the fact that this is what's happening. It doesn't change the fact that this is bottom line is, guys, as job seekers, it's not you. You have a right
It's not you.
to feel to get responses. You have a right to be considered for jobs you're qualified for based on your qualifications are exclusively, let's just all be clear, qualifications exclusively are based on education requirements, skill set requirements, and experience requirements. That's the definition of qualifications. Nothing else is a definition of qualifications. How much money you made in the last position should have no impact on what you're going to get offered in your next position. As a matter of fact, in case anybody's wondering, it's against the law for an employer to ask you what you made in your most recent position. They're not supposed to ask you those questions. And you are supposed to be offered based on how your qualifications align. And there's going to be a range available. And if you meet minimum qualifications, you get the bottom end of the range. And if you significantly exceed qualifications, you're at the top end of the range.
Period.
And that's the way it works, guys. It's really straightforward. This is not complicated. But again, I think a lot of times if you find that people, and this can apply to really anything in life, but I'll make it specific to here. If you find that when you're looking for a job, things start to get really complicated, that is an intentional action to slow things down, or there's some other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Right? That something else is at play. And, and there could be a lot of things behind the scenes going on. Like at the end of the day, an employer could potentially post up a job, but they already have an intention of hiring a referral to this role, but they still have to go through like the actions and pretending like they have someone else to hire. And by the way, if it's an internal candidate processes don't work that way. They actually advertise internally first. They consider internal candidates first if they're doing it the right way before they publicize a role. If you're an internal candidate and you're looking to, apply and you're qualified for a promotion, whatever the publicized range is for that role is also what they must offer you. What you're making in your current position is irrelevant. If you're receiving a promotion, they must offer you within the range that is a publicly advertised range. We got all kinds of stuff like that, by the way, to share with you if you guys are with employment law, but we did want to hone in on this particular topic today. All right, guys, thank you again. We hope that's been helpful. Again, if you don't know already, please check out my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. If you like what we have here, share this message out to other people that you know, whether it's you individually or people, friends and family that are struggling in their job search and have been for the last couple of years. Get this message out there. Listen, I'm all about spicing things up and drawing up a little controversy, because sometimes that's what it takes to get a message out there and get change to happen.
Exactly.
So best wishes to all of you. Thank you so much for watching today. Really appreciate it. I've seen lots of familiar names pop up here on the feed as I've been watching. It's great to see you guys. And thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.